working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus on tonight's headlines. Beijing and Manila vowed to resolve maritime disagreements through consultation. This during a visit by President Marcos to the Chinese capital amid heightened tensions over the hotly disputed West Philippine Sea. Myanmar's junta said it would hold free and fair multi-party elections as it marked Independence Day, days after increasing democracy figurehead Aung San Suu Kyi's jail term to 33 years. A glimpse of what the future of air travel could be like was on show at the recent Vietnam Motor Show in Ho Chi Minh City when Airlius, a Hanoi-based startup, unveiled what is poised to be the first electric flying car in Southeast Asia. And the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement entered into force for Indonesia on January 2nd. The preferential tariffs under the agreement can now be utilized by the private sector who are exporting to and/or importing from Indonesia. First in our news, President Marcos Jr. reported a productive bilateral meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing that focused on soft infrastructure, climate change, renewable energy, people-to-people ties, and agricultural cooperation that include the so-called Durian Protocol. Let's find out more.
Was with the President Xi Jinping, where we had a meeting with him as well. And we covered so many subjects, much more than is usual for these very formal meetings. We talked about the trade imbalance between our country and China and what we can do to remedy this. In fact, there has been created what we are now calling the Durian Protocol because they are opening their trade to imports of durian and other agricultural products from the Philippines so that we can redress the imbalance in our imports and exports from China. On the political front, we also discussed what we can do to move forward to avoid any possible mistakes, misunderstandings that could trigger a bigger problem than what we already have. And I was very clear in trying to talk about the plight of our fishermen. And the president promised that we would find a compromise and find a solution that will be beneficial so that our fishermen might be able to fish again in their natural fishing grounds. So that is some of the aspect. And then we talked about the renewable energy, even traditional energy we talked about. Of course, people-to-people relationships, tourism, cultural exchanges, educational exchanges. We spoke about the infrastructure and the continuing acceleration of investment by the Chinese government and Chinese corporations in the infrastructure development in the Philippines. There was even an offer of a so-called soft infrastructure in terms of the digitalization of our bureaucracy, our government, and the connectivity to our people. So it has been a very wide-ranging discussion, and we talked at great length towards the end about climate change. Because we are all very much in agreement, all the leaders that I have spoken to thus far are very much in agreement that this is a subject that we cannot leave alone, or it will come back to haunt us in the future if we do not prepare. So again, we said that we should come into partnership so that whatever experience we in the Philippines have, we can impart to them, the Chinese, and what China has experienced, they can also help us with the transfer of technology and the different strategies for the move to renewable energy.
Meanwhile, Beijing and Manila also vowed to resolve maritime disagreements through consultation. This during a visit by President Marcos Jr. to the Chinese capital amid heightened tensions over the hotly disputed South China Sea. China's state-owned broadcaster CCTV said Marcos and his Chinese counterpart both called for friendly consultation to appropriately resolve maritime issues at a meeting on Wednesday. But first, let's listen in.
Mr. President, this is your first visit to China since taking office. It's also your first official visit outside of ASEAN. You're also the first foreign leader that we receive here in China this year. All of these speak volumes about the closeness of China-Philippines relations. It also shows that our two sides both have an important position in each other's diplomatic agenda.
I am very gratified for your remembrances of even my little part that I played in the opening of relations between China and the Philippines. It has now become my responsibility, but certainly my privilege, to be able to continue on that legacy, to continue to promote the friendship between China and the Philippines.
China and the Philippines are at odds over the South China Sea, with Beijing claiming sovereignty over almost the entire area, despite an international court ruling that its claims have no legal basis. The Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei have overlapping claims to parts of the sea, and Manila ordered its military last month to boost its presence in the contested waters after a report that China had started reclaiming several unoccupied land features around the Spratly Islands. Meanwhile, at least 14 bilateral agreements were inked between the Philippines and China on the second day of President Marcos Jr.'s state visit to Beijing, according to Malacanang announcing it on Wednesday. Now, the signed deals aim to enhance the two countries' cooperation in various fields, including agriculture, infrastructure, development, cooperation, maritime security, and tourism. Undersecretary Cheloy Garafil, officer in charge of the Office of the Press Secretary, said in a statement. Now, Garafil also said the joint action plan for 2023-2025 on agricultural and fisheries cooperation was signed between the Department of Agriculture and the Chinese Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs. The two countries, Garafil said, also inked a memorandum of understanding on cooperation on the Belt and Road Initiative, a global infrastructure development strategy launched by Chinese President Xi Jinping in 2013 to invest in nearly 150 countries and international organizations, enhancing connectivity and facilitating smoother trade flows among Asia, Europe, and Africa. Now, Ms. Garafil said another MOU was signed between the Department of Information and Communications Technology and China's to improve the two nations' cooperation on digital and information and communications technology. Myanmar Junta said it would hold free and fair multi-party elections as it marked Independence Day, days after increasing democracy figurehead Aung San Suu Kyi's jail term to 33 years. Swaths of the Southeast Asian country have been engulfed by fighting between junta troops and anti-coup rebels since the military seized power almost 2 years ago. Take a look. The junta, which recently wrapped up a series of close court trials of Suu Kyi, is preparing for fresh elections later this year that the United States has said would be a sham. The junta imposed a state of emergency is due to expire at the end of January, after which the Constitution states authorities must set in motion plans to hold fresh elections. The junta chief gave no timetable for any election. Myanmar's military has made unsubstantiated allegations of massive voter fraud during elections in November 2020, which were won resoundingly by Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy as a reason for its coup. International observers said at the time the polls were largely free and fair. The World Health Organization criticized China's very narrow definition of COVID deaths, warning that official statistics were not showing the true impact of the outbreak. China has only recorded 22 COVID deaths since December and has dramatically narrowed the criteria for classifying such fatalities, meaning that Beijing's own statistics about the unprecedented wave are now widely seen as not reflecting reality. Now, WHO pointed out that the definition Beijing is using, quote, requires a respiratory failure associated with a COVID infection for a fatality to be registered as a COVID death. Let's listen in.
We know there are difficulties in all countries very often in recording hospital-related admissions and use of ICU facilities. But again, we believe that the current numbers being published from China underrepresent the true impact of the disease in terms of hospital admissions, in terms of ICU admissions, and particularly in terms of deaths. There are certainly issues in terms of the criteria for recording and reporting deaths attributable to COVID-19. We believe that definition is too narrow, which requires a respiratory failure in association with COVID-19 to be registered as a COVID-related death. That is a very narrow definition.
We continue to ask China for more rapid, regular, reliable data on hospitalizations and deaths, as well as more comprehensive real-time viral sequencing. With circulation in China so high and comprehensive data not forthcoming, as I said last week, it's understandable that some countries are taking steps they believe will protect their own citizens. This data is useful to WHO and the world, and we encourage all countries to share it.
We've seen the statement from the WHO's emergencies director that the current numbers being published from China underrepresent the true impact of the disease in terms of hospital admissions, in terms of ICU admissions, particularly in terms of deaths. I believe the same official went on to say that we still do not have complete data. That, of course, is the WHO's assessment. They are in the best position to make an assessment because PRC officials recently took part in discussions with them. The WHO is an indispensable organization. It is an organization that is at all times important. It is especially important in the midst of what still continues to be a pandemic that is having implications the world over.
Since COVID began, the Chinese side, guided by a people first and life first philosophy, has spared no effort to protect people's life and health and effectively coordinated epidemic response and socio-economic development. China has been sharing data and information with the international community responsibly. Incomplete statistics show that over the past 3 years, China had over 60 technical exchanges with the WHO, including 2 since the 10 new measures were announced. China continues to share the genome data about the virus through GSAT, and many health experts from foreign countries have said that there's no need to take special entry restrictions on China. Be it protecting people's life and health, or promoting global solidarity against COVID and boosting world economic recovery, the Chinese government has adopted responsible policies and measures and spared no effort and made important contributions. We noted that some people in the US have been commenting on China's adjustment of its COVID response. We also noticed that many people have said that if the US had not politicized COVID in the first place and instead had responsibly managed the situation like the Chinese government, then the epidemic situation in the US and across the world would probably be quite different today.
我们愿同国际社会加强沟通，共同努力战胜疫情。同时，也认为部分国家采取仅针对中国的入境限制措施缺乏科学依据，一些过度做法更让人不能接受。我们对试图操弄疫情防控措施以达到政治目的的做法表示坚决反对，将针对不同情况，本着对等原则采取相应措施。
Now, there's growing concern over China's steep rise in COVID infections since Beijing last month abruptly lifted years of hardline restrictions, with hospitals and crematoriums quickly overwhelmed. Outside of China, many experts have their attention on the U.S. and Omicron subvariant XBB 1.5, which has been detected in 29 countries so far. Maria Van Kerkhove, the WHO's COVID-19 technical lead, said global health officials are worried about how quickly the subvariant is spreading in the northeastern U.S. Take a look.
Every week, approximately 10,000 people die of COVID-19 that we are aware of. The true toll is likely much higher. We are really concerned about the current COVID-19 epidemiological picture, with both intense transmission in several parts of the world and a recombinant subvariant spreading quickly.
XBB.1.5 has been detected in 29 countries so far. There may be more as sequencing becomes less and less available at a global level. It's difficult for us to track each of these subvariants of Omicron. So it is part of Omicron, and as you've noted, it is the most transmissible subvariant that has been detected yet. More concerning, we've had a 15% increase in deaths in the last month. And again, we know that that is an underestimate because there's delays in reporting. And with the holiday period and with mixing, those trends are expected to continue. So it's really critical that surveillance continues, that we can track the known variants and that we can better assess, what is happening globally.
Now, the WHO said it doesn't have any data yet on the severity of XBB.1.5, but there's no indication at the moment that it makes people sicker than previous versions of Omicron. Scientists say XBB.1.5 is about as good at dodging antibodies from vaccines and infection as its XBB and XBB.1 relatives, which were two of the most immune-evasive subvariants yet. But XBB.1.5 has a mutation that makes it bind more tightly to cells, which gives it a growth advantage. Meanwhile, a total of 8 unvaccinated Filipinos who arrived in the country from China have tested positive for COVID, according to the Department of Health on Wednesday. The 8 Filipinos have undergone antigen tests that yielded positive results when they arrived at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport between December 27 last year and January 2 this year. The agency noted the individuals are currently under isolation and they've undergone confirmatory RT-PCR testing on December 31 last year with positive results. And as this developed, the DOH has assured the public of relentless COVID monitoring and surveillance activities nationwide and would, quote, keep an eye for global health events that may occur. To date, there are no cases of XBB.1.5 in the country. Forecasters said gusts of up to 70 miles rather, or 110 kilometers an hour, and intense rain could pummel the region through Wednesday, with the downpour continuing into Thursday, and I'm talking about California. Meteorologists at the National Weather Service said there could be widespread flooding, roads washing out, hillsides collapsing, trees down, widespread power outages, immediate disruption to commerce, and the worst of all, likely loss of human life. California Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency to support response and recovery efforts, while San Francisco established an emergency operations center. Bars and restaurants were shut as the city girded for the storm. storm, with local media now showing flooded roads and reports of long delays on public transport. Dozens of flights in and out of the city were canceled or delayed, while around 60,000 homes were without power, according to poweroutage.us website. City officials said they were working round the clock to try to help people prepare. The storm comes on the heels of a historic rainfall event in Northern California on December 31, in which San Francisco received 5.46 inches of rain, just shy of its all-time record, with the ground now saturated and with numerous rivers already at flood stage. The national rain and wind are expected to cause chaos across much of the state, including the possibility of large-scale power outages. A glimpse of what the future of air travel could be like was on show at the recent Vietnam Motor Show in Ho Chi Minh City, when Airlius, a Hanoi-based startup, unveiled what is poised to be the first electric flying car in Southeast Asia. The firm showcased a prototype of its autonomous personal flying vehicle at the event, a single-seater made of aluminum and carbon fiber, and it's powered by 8 brushless electric motors. It has the ability to rise up 10 meters within 10 seconds, and it can travel at a speed of 100 kilometers per hour. The prototype has flown 33 kilometers in 20 minutes and rises up to 120 meters, roughly the height of a 23-story building, on a single charge. In all, it has been tested. Mai Tian-Yu, the company's chief technology officer, told VN Express they plan to launch the maiden flight of the commercial version of Airlius by the end of 2023. Airlius, meanwhile, said it plans to sell commercially in 2024. The standard version will cost around $81,000 compared to, for instance, $92,000 for Swedish brand Jetson. Airlius will also offer other models costing up to $99,000. And the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP agreement, entered into force for Indonesia on January 2. The preferential tariffs under the agreement can now be utilized by the private sector who are exporting to and or importing from Indonesia. Additionally, the private sector can take advantage of the simplified rules of origin and trade facilitation in their business activities involving Indonesia. In a release issued by the Indonesian Ministry of Trade, Minister of Trade Zulkifli Hasan, he said that the RCEP agreement is expected to increase competitiveness and strengthen global production network, promote regional supply chain through better market access for exports of goods and services, reduce or eliminate trade barriers, and enhance transfer technology. Indonesia is the largest economy in ASEAN and the 5th largest among the RCEP parties. Its economy grew by 3.7% in 2021. To $1.186 trillion, making up 4% of the combined GDP of RCEP economies. The World Bank projected Indonesia's economy to grow by 5.2% in 2022 and 4.8% this year. The RCEP agreement was signed on November 15, 2020 by 15 countries, including the 10 ASEAN member states, Australia, China, Japan, Korea, and New Zealand. And here's a Canadian author who makes his writing geared towards Filipino culture. Let's hear more from our Canadian correspondent, Kat.
Sorry, could you read?
Welcome to another episode of Stories of Filipinos in Canada. Here with us is Natalie De Los Santos, an author, writer, and runs the book blog Philippines Page. Hello, Natalie.
Hello.
Thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, it's an honor. I'm always happy to talk about my work.
Are you born here in Canada?
Yes, I am born and raised here. My parents came here both in the 70s, and they met each other in Vancouver. My mom's from Cebu, and my dad is from Manila.
Natalie found connection with other people through her Filipino-inspired blog pages and book blog.
how I started this business was, it's more of like a book blog. It's slowly becoming a business, but now it's just more of a blog thing. And a lot of people wanted to learn more about their cultural background, which was fantastic. Maybe I'll go into a little bit of history of like why I started the book blog. I was collecting materials to study and learn more about pre-colonial Philippines, like before the Spanish invaded, and when the Spanish came, and the rebellions that happened when the Spanish came. And I basically, in writing that fantasy novel, I gathered all these books.
On her journey to embrace her cultural background, Natalie finds herself writing a Filipino novel, Diyos sa Mata, with inspiration from her family and books from Jose Rizal.
I just went down this like rabbit hole and just found all these books because I think I just was like, wait, I can't write this story without understanding the whole history. I guess a lot of the inspiration of this book are my parents' stories growing up in the Philippines. And then the other half of it, like while I was doing my research, but then when I read the work of Jose Rizal, like just his two books, like when I read it, I was like, I can't not include the Spanish influence and how it still kind of persists to this date of like, you know, this colonial mentality that a lot of people still have and they don't actually really know. And that's why I chose to tell the story during that time period of like that pre-colonial period. Like I think it would be easy, like, because some of it's real dark. If you read Jose Rizal stuff, it's very hard to access, especially for a young reader. So I'm hoping that when I finish my book, like a young reader could come out of it being like, that is what happened, like, and be curious about it, and then read Jose Rizal's work when they get there in terms of understand. So like, I'm hoping that my book and many other books that are coming out, because there's more people starting to publish stuff, is that it makes it more accessible for a wide audience to understand the history of the Philippines, because it's a big undertaking to learn all the history.
As a storyteller, Natalie's dream is to inspire more Filipino writers to be recognized in the digital world.
So one of the big things that I found useful in terms of starting my book blog, and it's through the system of kindness, I find, is if you understand what everybody else is doing. And I think one of the biggest things you can do in your early career is build those relationships. There's a small but mighty community, and they'll welcome you in. And also, like, on the flip side, it is quite difficult. Just keep going. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, as long as you're working hard and you're putting in the time and you're making the connections you like to make with other people, like you're gonna find a spot in this writing scene.
Thank you so much, Natalie. That is it for our episode. I hope everybody enjoyed. This is Kathleen Cruz from Journey Stories of Filipinos in Canada.
Join us next time here on Journey Stories of Filipinos in Canada.
Thanks, Kath. As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast of ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.